Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in Alberta today trying to convince Albertans he's going to build that pipeline. Trudeau met with Alberta Premier Rachel Notley face-to-face for the first time since a federal court of appeal ruling halted the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion. Notley has demanded Trudeau get the project built, and as Reid Feist reports, the pressure just keeps building.
The federal court of appeal ruled the approval process didn't consider environmental impacts, nor did the government adequately consult First Nations. The Prime Minister meeting privately late Wednesday with Alberta Premier Rachel Notley, who has demanded an appeal and an emergency session of Parliament, saying fixing the court's issues isn't possible.
I reject a scenario that has us talking until everybody says yes, because that is not how it's going to work.
Notley says making legislative changes may be the only way to get the pipeline built.
As things stand now, I personally worry that if we just kind of keep going back and forth to the courts saying, is this good enough? Is this good enough? Is this good enough? Without giving the courts more direction, that we, as I say, we're just going to be on a regulatory merry-go-round.
Pipeline opponents continue to fight. Conservationists launching a lawsuit against the federal government for failing to protect endangered southern orcas, which were identified as a potential victim to the increased tanker traffic because of the pipeline expansion.
We say that you need to deal with the existing threats first before you can even contemplate any increase in tanker traffic.
Voices that cannot be ignored as the government looks for a way to get the newly owned Crown Corporation project in the ground.
This really hurt as a ruling.
But the Prime Minister insists the Trans Mountain expansion will be built.
We're looking at what an appeal would look like, what it would mean. We're looking at legislative options, and we are also looking at what it would take to actually go through the steps that the court has laid out.
Well, the opposition parties went searching for answers today about what the government plans to do with the stalled Trans Mountain pipeline, but they didn't get what they wanted. The emergency meeting between 4 members of Parliament was called after a critical blow was dealt to the pipeline last week. A federal court ruled Ottawa failed to adequately consult with First Nations before it approved the project. Kinder Morgan sealed a deal to sell the pipeline to the federal government for $4.5 billion.
What Bill Morneau, Justin Trudeau's finance minister, has done is bought us into a $4.5 billion boondoggle from which we are now trying to escape.
We also would like to know what we just bought. As Mr. Canning's attempted at the end of committee to say, do we actually now fully own this pipeline, and what is it? Because the deal remains secret and Canadians don't know.
Conservative natural resources critic Shannon Stubbs has called on federal finance minister Bill Morneau and natural resources minister Amarjeet Sohi to appear before the committee, but it's unclear if that will happen.
The federal government is remaining tight-lipped over the future of the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion. Last week, the $4.5 billion line owned by taxpayers was stalled by a court of appeal decision. Omar Sachedina has an update.
5 days after a legal blow halting the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion, the Prime Minister offered no new information about the road ahead.
Well, obviously we are looking carefully at that the court ruling to understand what the path forward is.
The government is refusing to reveal what scenarios it's even considering.
And we will going to continue to explore options that will allow us in a responsible way to move forward on it.
But how?
All in favor?
Today, at an emergency session of the Natural Resources Committee,
Mr. Harvey?
Nay.
Mr. Tan?
No.
Mr. Whalen?
No.
Mr. Sarre?
No.
Ms. Fortier?
No.
Liberal MPs used their majority to quash a Conservative motion to summon the natural resources and finance ministers to testify.
We all represent the shareholders, and we want a shareholder meeting. Because management has failed.
The move would have allowed the committee to dig in to why the government bought the existing $4.5 billion pipeline, knowing a court decision on the approval process was pending.
As of today, there is no plan, no response, no concrete next steps for the expansion to go ahead.
Typically political foes, the Conservative motion also got support from the NDP. It wants the Liberals to walk away from the deal.
I do not believe in putting our public resources in buying a pipeline.